Welcome back, everybody, and welcome into another hour of Auto World. It's great to have you on board. We've got something cool coming up. We're going to visit with our expert when it comes to lubrication, Dan Watson, and he's one of the largest distributors of Amsoil in all of North America. And he's going to be here to answer your questions via the telephone at 855-660-4261, 855-660-4261, or if you prefer the email, bob@autoworldradio.com. Why don't we go to Dan and welcome him into today's show. Dan, how are you doing?
Hey, Bob, I'm doing great on this Sunday evening. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for asking me. And a question I get asked a lot is about the expense of synthetic oil, that some people consider it too expensive.
Well, let's take that on from a couple of different directions, because, boy, that comes up all the time, and there's some misunderstandings. But I thought they'd take a look at that from the cost of a lot of things. And we got a lot of folks listening to the show out there that get a feel for this. But let's go back to when Amsoil was first produced, 1971. Okay? Now, in 1971, you could buy a lot of American cars for, let's just say, $4,000, give or take. Some would be even cheaper. $4,000 for a brand new car. Okay, in 2018, Bob, what would you say? Average for those same cars, 25, 28,000, maybe 30,000.
Yeah, believe it or not. A new car, average new car going out the door, and this is just average. It's creeped up to close to $35,000.
All right, so if I take a car, and we'll even bump it a little to make life easy, and we'll say that it was a $5,000 car in 1971, okay? That car cost 7 times as much as it cost in 1971. 7 times. Now, I'm dating myself, but in that same time frame, I used to work part-time. I was in high school then. But the minimum wage in Florida was $1.25.
Yeah.
The minimum wage in 2018, depending on where you are, but in Florida, I believe it is now going to $9.35, I think. Now, that's about 7 times the increase in the minimum wage. Now, Amsoil in 1971 produced a quart of synthetic oil, and it sold retail for $6 a quart. Now, to put that in perspective, in 1971, if you watched where things were, you could get a lot of petroleum oil for 70 cents a quart.
Mm.
So they came out with this just tremendous synthetic oil, but it was almost, let's just say it was at least 7 times as expensive as the petroleum that it was sitting on the shelf next to trying to sell. All right? Now, in 2018, if you were to go online and buy Amsoil's Best Signature Series Synthetic, it might cost you about $12 a quart. Wow, $12 a quart. Yeah, that's what you'd see. And that is 2 times what it sold for in 1971.
Wow.
Not 7 times, but 2 times. 1971, it sold for $6. 2018, it sells for $12. Now, I would have to say that if we looked over at the other oils, that 70-cent quart of Quaker State in 1971, now if you go into a parts store, will cost you $4.50. And that's $5. That's about 7 times. So oil products gone up 7 times, cars gone up 7 times, minimum wage gone up 7 times, Amsoil's gone up 2 times. I'd consider that to be really pretty good cost control by Amsoil over that period of, 1971 to 2018. Almost unbelievably good cost control.
That is so true.
But anyway, let's get back now to how we look at this economically for buying this stuff. And let's just, as the lawyers say, we'll stipulate that prices have increased, but they have increased in everything. And you know that, folks, when you're out there trying to make your paycheck last from payday to payday with the way things have gone up. It's just no doubt about it. But you can save yourself some money if you use the right synthetic oil. And I'll lay that out here. It makes sense. But I don't want to quite get into the comparison until after the break that's coming up, because I want to go through it without stopping. But let's look at the fact that in synthetic engine oils, they're not all the same. You can buy a lot of synthetic engine oils that have, they don't do anything with so-called longer or extended drain. They just tell you to put this oil in and run it and drain it at the normal drain interval, whatever your manufacturer calls for. They don't show anything that's extended on that. And in those cases where the manufacturer of the oil doesn't offer anything more than a standard oil change, if I'm paying $4.50 for a quart of Valvoline petroleum, and I got to pay $12 or $10 or so for a quart of synthetic, and I'm going to run both oils for 3,000 or 4,000 miles, say 4,000 miles, then you look and say, boy, I'm paying a lot more for that synthetic. Is it really worth it? Now, that makes sense for you to ask that question. Is it really worth it? Now, I think it is, if for no other reason than the better protection that you would get over the same period of time, better fuel economy, better protection, and you have an awful lot of what I call reserve protection in the oil, that you could have an unusual situation and your car could get exceptionally hot, or you could find yourself stranded in a blizzard and still be able to start the car up. So there are advantages on the extreme, either hot or cold, that synthetic would give you, which you'd be really glad that you had it if that happened. But in its day-to-day protection is better than petroleum. So that would be a justification from a money side. It's really worth it anyway. But when you start comparing how much does it cost me for this oil, you look at Amsoil as a extended drain oil. And folks, what that means is you can run Amsoil longer than the manufacturer's recommended drain intervals in your car. If they recommend that you change your oil at regular petroleum oil at 4,000 miles, and you're going to run Amsoil's going to give you some longer drain intervals that allows you to run that oil for a much longer period of time without having to change it. So when we come back from the break, Bob, why don't we do a few numbers and see how the money works out?
Absolutely. Our telephone number is 800-855-660-4261, 855-660-4261, or Bob at AutoWorldRadio.com. Don't go away. We're coming right back.
Broadcasting from the middle of Corvette Boulevard and Stingray Avenue, this is Auto World with your host, Bob Long.
We're coming at you live all across North America, around the world, telephone-wise. We've got Daniel standing by to take your calls. The number is 855-660-4261, or via the email, easiest one, Bob at AutoWorldRadio.com. And, of course, you can also write our very special guest in this hour, regular contributor, Dan Watson at thelubepage.com. So plenty of emails, plenty of great information. So, Dan, let's go back to that question regarding the price.
You bet. Now, we were talking before about, you can use an oil like Amsoil Synthetics that offers extended drains, longer drain intervals, time. So if you bought oil for $4 a quart, good petroleum oil for $4 a quart, and you were going to run it for 4,000 miles, okay? So you do that. Now, if you bought our mid-grade synthetic, which is what we call the XL, that's our middle-of-the-line synthetic, and that oil is a little less than our Signature Series, but let's use that one as the first example, and let's say that you have to spend $9 a quart to buy that oil, okay, the retail price. Well, that'd be about twice what you paid for the top-of-the-line grade petroleum, but we recommend that oil for 1 year or 12,000 miles. So instead of just going 4,000 miles, you'd go 12,000 miles, but you only paid twice as much for the oil. So I think it's easy to see that analysis. I pay twice as much, but I go 3 times as long. It's saving you at least 33% on the cost of your oil. Now, that's the price of looking at the oil. If you go out here in town and you get an oil change, what you'll find is that most of the Amsoil XL, the mid-grade oils, you're going to get them for around $70 to $75 to maybe $79 for an oil change. But that's good for 1 year or 12,000 miles. If you get the best grade petroleum oil to go 4,000 miles, you're going to pay at least $30 for that oil change. Now, if you go to a dealership, you pay $40, $45, but just at a lube place, you probably could get by for $29.95 or something, or so let's say $30. So you pay $30 for an oil change. The other one, let's say you pay $75 for the Amsoil oil change, but I have to do 3 petroleum oil changes, and I have to do 1 of the Amsoil Synthetic XL oil changes, so I spend $90 with 3 oil changes for petroleum, and I spend $75 with 1 oil change from Amsoil XL. So that's our mid-grade oil. That's not our top-of-the-line, but that one right there shows you that you get not only the savings in money, but you get a better quality oil than the petroleum as far as its protection factors and convenience. Never think about convenience. You didn't have to go drop the car off or go through and wait on it for 2 other oil changes. You just did 1 oil change, okay? Now, if we step up to the Amsoil Signature Series synthetic oil, it's good for 1 year or 25,000 miles. So if you did that oil change and compared it to the petroleum oil change of 4,000 miles, then we're going to go 6 times as long. Now, that oil would cost $12 a quart retail, which would mean it costs around 3 times the price of the petroleum, but instead of, it's 3 times as expensive, but it goes 6 times as long. It's just a tremendous savings. And then if you start adding that up, if you had to get 6 of those $30 oil changes, that'd be $180. Now, most people are doing the Signature Series oil change in a lube place, like a tire store, for anywhere from $99 to $119. So you're going to get the advantage of, you would have paid $180 for the 6 petroleum oil changes, and you're going to pay $100 to $119 for the Signature Series oil. Now, that's just in comparison of what you pay for the oil changes. There is no comparison when you look at what Signature Series oils do. They're like talking about, if you looked at tires, they would be the high-speed, high-temperature, load range, maximum traction, best radial that you could put on your car, and you would be getting that compared to, you would get it where if you bought a cheaper radial, wouldn't have near the protection, or I mean the traction and the usage. So The Signature Series oils are bulletproof. They give you protection, which is not found in virtually any other oil in the marketplace. And if you can do that and save yourself $60, $70 in the actual cost, and then gain maximum superior protection, you're getting your cake and you're eating it too. It is really an unbelievable advantage. Now, I will say this, the reason I gave both examples, Bob, of the mid-range XL and the Signature Series is because Signature Series will really save you money if you're a high-mileage person. But if you're not going to drive much beyond the 12,000 miles, you've probably saved the most money using the XL mid-range oil that's 12,000 miles or 1 year. Now, people would ask, they say, well, this is just Amsoil coming up with these numbers, and how do we know that they're even capable of doing this? Well, since 1971, they've been making these recommendations, and the company continues to grow and goes year after year after year after year without any kind of controversy or claim that anything didn't meet up or something failed to meet the requirements that they said it would do. Just doesn't happen. And then we got companies like Mobil has come along and produced an annual oil change that they have, which is 1 year or 20,000 miles. And, of course, their oil is equal to or greater, more expensive than our Signature Series. But I will tell you, it still doesn't match up to our Signature Series. There's no oil in the marketplace that performs as well as the Amsoil Signature Series oil. So I want to put to bed the fact that you can't afford to run synthetic. In many cases, it's pay me now or pay me later. If you can pay a little more up front, you'll pay a lot less over the same number of miles than you would have paid if you stuck with the shorter drain interval petroleum engine oil, and you'll miss out on the better protection and the greater range of protection from very, very cold to very, very hot. So it's just all the logic goes in one direction. So we'll talk more about it after the break. But it's just it doesn't take rocket science to figure it out.
Absolutely. Great information as usual from Dan Watson. I'm Bob Long. You're listening to Auto World. Give us a call with your questions, 855-660-4261. I'm Bob Long.
Hey, it's Billy F. Gibbons from ZZ Top, and you're listening right here to Auto World.
Hope you've had a great weekend. This is Bob Long. The name of the program is Auto World. We're learning a lot, as we always do, from our regular contributor. He's the guy we go to with oil questions, lubrication questions. He has more than 35 years of extensive lubrication experience and has one of the largest Amsoil distributorships all across North America, both in the U.S. and Canada. And there's certainly those prices that you've been telling us, it certainly proves that Amsoil is not jacking some of those prices up on the same level as other competitors. And it sounds, so far, I think Amsoil is doing the best here.
Well, Bob, we see Amsoil just recently had about a 3% price increase. About 25 cents a quart on the wholesale side, somewhere in that range. Now, one thing in all this that we can see is they begrudgingly put a price increase on. They could, at the same time here just recently, the other guys were throwing on 6 or 8% price increases in the other oil companies. They ended up with a 3%. They just don't want to pass on more than what it costs because they want people to be able to get a premium product at a fair price, but they can't absorb the cost of the increasing chemicals and things that it takes to make a modern oil, lubricating oil. So Amsoil is not a refiner. They don't make the raw material into usable products. They take usable products manufactured by chemical companies, and then they put those together and they make oil. They blend that oil together to their formula to make what they want to sell to the customer. So if the guys, it's like if you're making vegetable soup and the carrots go up, well, guess what? You're going to have to increase the price of your finished vegetable soup because you got to pay for the carrots. So it's unfortunate it's the way it is, but when we're talking about how these prices have gone up over the years, all anybody has to do is look back at the price of gasoline, right? I mean, we're talking about gasoline again was about, 30 cents a gallon back in 1970. And today I just came by someplace here in this area. It was $2.79 or something. So that's 9 times as high as it was in 1970, 71. So everything around us has had this type of a price increase, and those are the things that are in the what they call petrochemical industry, which certainly that's where Amsoil has to function, because the petrochemical companies that make the additives that go in, the antioxidants, the anti-wear additives, the anti-foaming, all these different chemical products that come from the petrochemical industry. So if oil in 1971 was $4 a barrel, crude oil, in 2018, right now it's running about $65 a barrel, which would be about 15 times what it cost back then. So I just say to all the listeners is, you and I, we're in the businesses we're in. We're just as distressed by the never-ending increase in prices as anybody else. But it's something we have to live with, because obviously over time things go up. We have to adjust to them and still look for what is the best deal in the current pricing structure that we can get. And then, like most Americans, we hope that our income will go up to keep up somewhat with all these costs that keep going up. And I think that's the one thing that had most Americans on edge, is that it's been hard for the payroll to keep up with the cost of living and the expenses that just keep climbing. I know where you and I live, it's just amazing watching people try to find a place to live, because the rents have become outrageous. The cost of housing is going up so rapidly that the blue-collar workforce is having a hard time finding a place to live.
Yep.
So
it's a shame.
Well, now back, though, to the stuff that we know about. As you've been telling all the folks to ask us questions, there's a couple I have, and there's a couple that you have that I sent over to you that I get during the week, and those are sometimes good, because if I get one, it usually means that it's going to answer a question for several other people. So I want to encourage our listeners, keep sending the questions. You can send them to Bob directly. You can send them to me. You can go to thelubepage.com, ask a question on the Lube page, and you can also email me directly, Dan Watson at thelubepage.com. And that's where Bob and I get our questions from. We don't make them up. We just get them from the number of people that go through the website and ask questions, and they may have already been answered for that person, okay, but they haven't been answered for everybody on the air. So if you send us a question to one of these places, we'll answer you personally, but we save a number of these questions to put on the air because they'd be pertinent for other people to hear it. So you may hear your question on the air if you've sent it at an earlier time.
So true. I got a question from Bill from Georgia, and his question for you, Dan, is what Amsoil would you recommend for a 2018 Power Stroke diesel from Ford? Boy,
well, that's a heck of a machine, Bill Scott.
Yeah.
I have a friend here that came over the other day and talked to me and got some oil, and got one of those 2017, year before, but 2017 F-350 Ford Power Stroke. I mean, this thing looks like it's big enough to go in the Freightliner business, and start hauling anything you want. Not only pull your RV, but pull your house off the foundation if you hook up to it. I mean, what a truck. But these things are marvels of modern technology, these Power Stroke diesels, and you need to take care of them. And that brings up a good question. The new diesel-rated oil, heavy-duty diesel oil, has a classification or a rating of CK. Now, the one prior to that was CJ4. Now we have CK4. And what is interesting, and our listeners, if you have a Ford Power Stroke out there, need to understand, Ford came out and rejected that the requirements of that CK4 oil were sufficient to protect their Power Stroke. Now, that's a big, bold step, because most of the time nobody challenges what the API ends up with, but they said, hey, we don't like it. We don't think it provides enough wear protection. So if you own one of these Power Strokes and you go to buy oil for it, you have to make sure that you look on that bottle and it shows that it meets the Ford OEM, or original equipment manufacturer's specification for the Power Stroke. It needs to be listed on there, and you'll see it if it is, and then you can feel pretty good about it. Now, the Amsoil synthetic diesel oils, we didn't have to modify them at all because we supersede things by so far that Ford's completely delighted with the Amsoil's performance to be used in their Power Stroke. But they were not happy with the performance that they got in field testing from the CK4 rated diesel oil. So it's a very good...
Giving your radio a broadcasted tune-up. This is Auto World and your host, Bob Long.
We're back. It's Bob Long along with Dan Watson. More than 35 years of lubrication experience, and he's lending all of his expertise to us here on the show. We answered a question from Bill from Georgia about a 2018 Ford Power Stroke diesel. We got another question here. This one doesn't say where she wrote from, but according to Toyota, they say change the oil every 10,000 miles or 1 year. Do I have to use synthetic? Barbara is answering and is throwing that question out there. What do you think?
Well, it's a good question because you're talking about a Toyota, and the answer is yes. You need to understand she doesn't tell us what year her Toyota is, but it's going on since about 2008. 2009 was the first year that Toyota went bumper to bumper synthetic, and that they require synthetic oils to maintain your warranty. So the answer is yes, you have to use synthetic in these late model Toyotas. That's what's required from the factory. That's what's required to maintain their warranty. I mean, Bob, that sounds harsh, but the real reality is that Toyota went through a pretty nasty period back in like 98 to 2002 with a bunch of Celica engines and things that they had trouble with, and they honored them all, and they spent millions of dollars replacing a whole bunch of high-performance V6 engines. And as time went on, Toyota began to understand that, hey, you're just going to have to go on and go up to where you should be and use the better protection, the higher performance of synthetic engine oils to protect your vehicles. And their only reason they hesitated for years was availability. See, people are always worried, hey, if I say you got to use synthetic in this car, and what's the availability of synthetics? But synthetics are available everywhere now. There's multiple options to buy different synthetics. And so Toyota decided that for the protection of their vehicles and their warranty issues, they're going to require synthetic engine oil, synthetic transmission fluid, and synthetic gear lubes in all of their cars. It's basically bumper to bumper. And so, yes, I know the lady, if she's listening, Barbara, if you're listening, you'll probably be a little aggravated, but don't be. The fact that Toyota made that choice to go to synthetic, that indicates that they know what's best for you and your car, because that's a good choice to make. There are many other vehicles like Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, a variety of different GM products and Ford products that now require synthetic engine oil and synthetic transmission fluids in other places. So it is coming. It's the, shall we say, the sharp oil companies that are making that transition early. And Bob, with new 0W16 coming from Japan, 0W16 is soul machine oil. It will only have a chance to survive in the car if it's a full quality synthetic engine oil. There's no way anything else will work. So we'll be 100% synthetic in everything probably no later than 2025. Every single thing that's produced at the factory will come out with some type of synthetic engine oil in it. So I hope that answers that for Barbara. But yes, 10,000 miles, it'll be worth it. You'll get your money's worth out of it.
That's great. We got another question floating in here. Let's see. This one is coming to us via the email. Lots of email questions tonight. And this is Wayne in Indianapolis, Indiana. The question he has is, I heard about you from a car guy on a radio station, and it sounded like you could probably answer the questions I have. I have always used a 5W30 synthetic type oil in my Toyota, and it states it's good for 6 months. I probably drive it around 3,000 miles a year. Would it be okay to just start changing the oil filter once a year instead of every 6 months, or should I go by miles driven? How long would this oil last? And filter, how long can you get mileage out of it? I was told by a guy that changes the oil that the oil maker has much information where the bottles could use, while on the bottles they could sell more. Just wondering the real truth. Sorry.
Yeah, it is amazing. I always love that, don't you, Bob, when you hear the thing, I was told by a guy.
Yeah, that's true.
I was told by a guy back behind an oak tree over on Smitty's farm. You know? No, anyway, his question's good, though. Here's the thing. He's wondering, hey, you're using the synthetic engine oil, and it says that you should change your oil every 6 months or 6,000 miles. And, hey, is that really necessary? Well, here's the thing, and this listeners need to pay attention and hear this. There's a number of oil companies that really only make oil that they intend for it to last 6 months. You say, oh, how can that be? Well, because some of these oils are cheap enough made that they will react with oxygen while just sitting in the oil pan, okay? So you have to be a little bit careful and not go much over the recommended time span that an oil company recommends, because that's based upon a lot of fudge factors they put in there of how you may be using the car in that period of time. So here's the thing. You want to feel secure? There are oils now that say annual oil change. We mentioned 2 of them from Amsoil, the Amsoil XL oil, the mid-range 12,000 miles or 1 year. So you would just change that oil with this low mileage once a year. You wouldn't come anywhere close to the mileage. There's the Amsoil, the 25,000 mile oil, but quite frankly, with that little bit of mileage that he drives, I wouldn't want to spend that kind of money for a 25,000 mile capability when I'm going to drive 3,000 miles. So I'd stick with the XL oil. And there's even that mobile annual change, but it's also very expensive, more expensive than our Signature Series, and it's a 20,000 mile rated. So you might be safe if you had a good quality synthetic name brand like Valvoline or Castor Oil, and you didn't worry too much and you just left it in there for a year. But you would be outside of that oil company's warranted recommendation, okay? So you got to be careful about doing that. And if you're going to continue with that low mileage, that short amount of mileage, you might want to contact me at the lube page and ask me if we've got some classic car oils that might work a little better for you, because the thing is, some of these classic car oils actually have extra rust inhibitors and things in them so that an infrequently used vehicle will be better protected from just sitting there and getting some rust oxide inside the engine because it's driven so very little. 3,000 miles is 250 miles a month. You might put that on in 2 or 3 days, and the rest of the time the vehicle sits and does nothing. So those are different considerations for which type of oil is the best. And the one thing that I try to do at Amsoil is to have oils tailored for your specific needs. So if you've got a very low mileage car, we'll just expand this a little. If you have a very low mileage vehicle, you need to be a little bit concerned about rust and oxidation inside the engine. And you either need to start that vehicle up once a month and bring it to full temperature for 30 minutes and turn it off, or else you need to get some better rust-inhibited protection in it from a tailor-made classic car oil that's designed to protect very low-mileage cars that aren't driven very much, because it will rust. And people say, how can that be possible that inside my engine would rust? Well, you know, it's got a breather on it, it's open to the air, and especially in humid climates, when it cools down at night, everything shrinks. It gets cold inside the engine, it sucks air in, sucks in new, moist, laden air. That air then condenses on the metal surfaces, and you have moisture all over the place inside the engine. When the day comes and it warms up, the air gets warm inside and it pushes it out. And then as it cools down, it sucks more in. So the engine's actually breathing through expansion and contraction, and it's bringing a lot of moisture inside. And moisture is your enemy inside your engine. So you have to be prepared for it, and you have to use things that have actual true rust inhibitors. That's what marine engine oils, certain motorcycle oils, and classic car oils have in them for infrequent use. So I know we're running out of time, so I want to encourage the listeners to go to the Loop page. Check me out on YouTube. All you got to do is put Dan Watson on YouTube, type in my name, you'll find my YouTube. Go to thelooppage.com, and you'll get all kinds of good information, and send me your questions.
On the road again.
Great job as usual. Thank you so much, Dan.
I'm so tired of crying, but I'm out on the road again. I'm on the road again.
Folks, this is Bob Long, host of Auto World Radio, with great news. We have a new sponsor, Dan Watson, who distributes Amsoil throughout the USA and Canada. Dan is one of Amsoil's largest distributors. He's a former U.S. Navy nuclear specialist and a certified lubrication specialist with 25-plus years of experience. You can listen to Dan every Sunday evening live at 6 p.m. Eastern Time here on GCNlive.com. Get all of your questions answered and ensure you get the best lubrication for your car, truck, boat, or really anything that moves. In 1972, Amsoil pioneered synthetic lubrication, and Amsoil continues to provide the best lubrication money can buy. Get the best advice for the best results. Contact Dan at thelubepage.com. That's thelubepage.com, or call 800-370-2986. That's 800-370-2986.